We thought we'd kick off with linebacker on the defensive side of the ball. Luckily, I just quickly Googled who we traded for from the Texans because I forgot last week and I forgot again. And Benedict McKinney, if you're listening, I'm really sorry, mate, but just not really that memorable. So we brought in McKinney to kind of sit there alongside Andrew Van Ginkel and Jerome Baker in the middle as well. Ollie, I mean, the linebacking core is like okay past Micah Parsons, isn't it? But there's also a few like question marks around Parsons' character, I think, which is kind of bumping him down the board slightly. But if he was there at 18, or if he was there at like 15, and the Dolphins identified linebacker as a big need and decided to come up a few picks, I mean, it feels like Micah Parsons would be a huge upgrade on what we've got already.
Yeah, there's no doubt in the talent that Micah Parsons possesses. You know, he's been pretty much penciled in as the #1 linebacker in this class since the start of 2019 season. Really, it's been that long, and obviously he didn't play in 2020. But unlike some guys who didn't play this year, he certainly hasn't been forgotten about. I think the thing with Parsons is he probably doesn't get past 17 in the Las Vegas Raiders if he does fall because of the character concerns, and they seem to be genuine character concerns. And if he was to fall into your lap at 18, that's a huge get, as long as the organisation are happy with whatever they find out when they do their due diligence where Micah Parsons is concerned. I think outside of Micah Parsons, you look at a guy like Zaven Collins from Tulsa, you look at a guy like Nick Bolton from Missouri, who didn't have a great pro day yesterday, tested very poorly. So he might even be a guy that you could look at in the second round with one of those 2 second-round picks. You know, pick 36 would have been a good landing spot for him if he didn't push his way into the first round, and that's before his testing. So yeah, I like a guy like Zaven Collins for the Dolphins, and I know Dalton Miller, who's a guy I work with at Pro Football Network, he, in his recent mock draft, he put Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah as the pick at 18 for the Dolphins, which makes a whole ton of sense because he's a guy who can play that safety role. He can play that linebacker role. He's this year's Isaiah Simmons, but without the hype. And whether that's because the Cardinals didn't figure out how to use Isaiah Simmons and kind of people are looking at Koramoah and saying, look, how do we use him in the NFL? Well, you look how the Carolina Panthers used Jeremy Chin this year, and they got so much more out of him than the Cardinals did out of Isaiah Simmons. There's no reason to suggest a defensive guy like Brian Flores can't get the best out of a guy like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. So I think I don't see him falling that far personally, but if he was, that's a guy you've got to look at 18 potentially. And then again, you come back to if you're looking later on in the draft, you do start running out of options at the linebacker position. You maybe look at a guy like Chaz Surratt from North Carolina. You look at guys, the Ohio State linebackers, then all the way back down, you know, you've got that big gap again where you're in no man's land between round 4 and round 7.
Yeah,
I applaud your. Sorry, go on.
No, sorry. I was going to say make the same point as you're going to make about your pronunciation.
Yeah.
Before you jumped on, I was like, God, I hope he doesn't. I don't have to say Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah first, because there you go. So you nailed that. Sorry, go on. You're going to make another point.
No, I was just going to say the same thing, actually, in that we were struggling before we pressed record to pronounce his name. So I'm glad we don't have to now. But that was perfect, Ollie.
Thank you.
So can you see like a big need there? Do you think after the McKinney trade, obviously McKinney seems like a serviceable starter, has been for the Texans, do you think they'll go fairly early, or do you think they'll maybe like around 3 or 4 sort of pick there?
Well, I was looking at this mock draft that Ollie mentioned from Dalton Miller, and my first opinion when I saw his pick at 18, and it wasn't Najee Harris, I thought it was a bit underwhelming. But then I read between the lines a little bit more and read what he actually said about the type of player he is, and he's the perfect fit for the Dolphins, I think, in terms of his multi-capabilities with regards to his positioning on the field. And that's just the sort of player that I think Brian Flores would love in that organisation, particularly with the fact that he's very similar to Jamal Adams in his deployment in terms of playing safety, which is also an area potentially that the Dolphins would need to address. So whilst I was a bit underwhelmed to begin with, I actually think it'd be a pretty decent selection for the team if that's the way they decided to go. Personally, I'm still in the Harris camp, but if for whatever reason you can't select him at 18, then certainly, yeah, that would be a pick I'd endorse.
I mean, you might not be able to select him at 18 because you selected him at 3, so...
Stop it, mate. Go on.
But talking of linebackers, it seems like the Dolphins see McKinney as an upgrade over Carl Van Noy. It seems like they see the aggregate as like we're paying less and getting not enough less to warrant the money. If that makes sense, I'm trying to think of the right way to word that. You know, they don't see the drop in players as enough to keep Carl Van Noy and the money was on. Funnily enough, I said earlier in the season I thought Jerome Baker would be the one that was let go. I got the wrong linebacker, but let's be honest. Beginning of last season, they traded Raekwon McMillan, and people were shocked because it kind of came out of nowhere. This year, no one saw Carl Van Noy getting cut. Like, if anyone did, I applaud you because that is a brilliant piece of predicting. But you know, it feels like they kind of went after and got the guy they wanted, and they weren't willing to fight people in free agency, so trade for one.
Yeah, that's it. And Ollie's going with Van Noy back in New England. But I think we will address it at some point in the draft. We've got to. I think really the depth there just drops off a cliff, doesn't it? After if like Baker or even Van Ginkel went down, you kind of back to the kind of special teams guys that kind of transfer over to linebacker as well. But yeah, I mean, I quite like Chelsea. I've been watching Chelsea a lot. We talk about UNC loads on the college football podcast I do, and he's kind of a very raw talent, isn't he? But he's certainly one that's going to develop, and he's a natural leader as well, which is what you want from your linebackers. So yeah, that'll be an interesting one to watch.